When I started my public life 12 years ago, I understood the media might be interested in what I did, but I was not aware of how overwhelming that attention would become.
Paris, the 30th of August 1997. At 10 to 10, everyone turns to watch her as she enters. Beautiful, tall, blonde bombshell. It's Diana, Princess of Wales, the people's princess, the queen of people's hearts, and the ex-wife of Prince Charles. She is an icon and a global sensation, and everyone is obsessed with her. Her charity work, her unique style, and her love of sharing the limelight with her cherished British designers. Since the beginning of the summer, she has a new lover. Dodi Al-Fayed, 42-year-old Egyptian man who is Muslim. Quite different from the standard British marries British royal love story. He is, just like the royals, mega rich. He himself is a successful movie producer and the son of Mohammed Al-Fayed, who at the time was the owner of the Ritz and Harrods. Since Diana and Dodi got together, they are followed by paparazzi 24/7. And the reason? The kiss. One unique photo earning a tidy £1 million. One photo, and Dodi and Diana had become paparazzi prey. Diana is used to being followed by the press. She knew this was part of the deal when she married into the royal family. But even she is somewhat disturbed by the increased frenzy. For Dodi, this is another world and he is struggling, overwhelmed from the hounding of the press. After a short holiday together, they arrive back in Paris. As they land, they are targeted. So they vow to each other that they will find a way to escape the photographers. They cancel their dinner plans at the last minute and decide instead to eat at Dodi's dad's restaurant at the Ritz in a private suite. They have an exquisite meal, washed down with one of France's finest champagnes. They could not have known that this would be their last meal. During the time they are eating, the paparazzi have managed to uncover their secret location and a crowd is gathering outside. With every bite and gulp of champagne, the word spreads and the crowd grows. If they had stuck to their original dinner plans, the lovers would have braved the big crowd of press and then most likely made it home safely. They asked their trusted driver to bring their usual car round to the front door of the hotel and leave the engine running as if they are just moments away from jumping in and driving off. Whilst their ruse is working on the crowd at the front, they sneak into a Mercedes S2 at the back service entrance. Waiting in the car to drive them home is Henri Paul, head of security at the Ritz and one of Mohammed's most trusted employees. They will also be joined by bodyguard Trevor Rees Jones. They set off on their journey at 11:40 p.m. The bodyguard and the head of security in the front, Dodi and Diana in the back. The problem is that someone has leaked information of this top secret decoy plan to the press. Hordes of journalists scramble to track Dodi and Diana's car, which they know has just left the service entrance of the Ritz. What was meant to be an uneventful drive home is now about to turn into a chase through the dimly lit streets of Paris. Journalists who had waited outside for one shot for hours, frantically switching locations to try and follow the couple, had now just missed their opportunity to get their one shot of the couple leaving the hotel together. They are getting frustrated. At least 3 mopeds and a huge amount of cars are hot on their tail. Dodi and Diana have 2 big problems. Henri Paul is not a professional driver. He does not have much experience driving high security targets, nor is he trained in the art of driving through a stream of bright flashing lights coming from hungry paparazzi swarming around the car on mopeds. Honestly, nobody could be prepared for this. Secondly, Henri Paul has had a couple of drinks. This was a last minute plan and of course he wouldn't have had anything if he knew he was going to be driving, but it is worse than that. He has also taken some Prozac. This combination can lead to poor decision making, slower reflexes and impaired coordination. When Dodi and Diana's car stops at the first set of traffic lights, already half a dozen photographers trying to catch a photo through the windows have surrounded. Dodi, who is allegedly sick of the media circus, encourages Henri Paul to try and shake them off. He asks him to accelerate. There's no doubt that Henri Paul is a dedicated professional. You don't become head of security at the Ritz if you are not exceptional. So infused with the cocktail of prescription drugs and alcohol and his determination to be brilliant at his job, he aims for a route that will allow them to increase their speed significantly. He accelerates and runs a red light in a desperate attempt to lose them. One paparazzi was quoted saying that they were going at supersonic speed. Henri Paul was trying to do his best for Dodi and Diana. They were travelling at 150 kilometers per hour when they entered the Tunnel d'Alma. Simultaneously, coming off a slip road into the tunnel is a small white Fiat Uno. It pulls out onto the tunnel road in front of them, travelling at the usual speed of 50 kilometers per hour. Henri Paul attempts to pass by the Fiat, careful not to slow down too much because the paparazzi are still close behind. As the Mercedes begins to pass the Fiat Uno, Henri Paul misses the mark. His car makes contact with the back left bumper of the white Fiat Uno, which has an immediate effect on the stability of the Mercedes. He's trying to regain control when he scuffs the third pillar running through the centre of the tunnel, separating them from oncoming traffic. That in turn swings the car back over to the right, but too much. And the vehicle is now out of Henri Paul's control. When he realizes this, he slams on the brakes. For a total of 30 meters, the car is skidding recklessly through the tunnel, but at an astronomical speed until it collides with the 13th pillar. It begins to flip and whilst doing so, violently rams into the tunnel wall. The car has come to a complete stop in the middle of the tunnel. The sound of the horn blaring continuously begins to fill the air. The tunnel is beginning to fill with smoke, maybe from an oil leak. Henri Paul is dead on impact. His spine is broken and a major artery damaged. His chest crushed and his legs shattered. His body has been forced into the horn, causing the eternal blaring. Dodi is also instantly killed at the scene. He had not attached his seatbelt and he had been violently thrown from his seat on impact. The bodyguard who was in the front, Trevor is seriously injured. His face took heavy impact, crushing bones, but he is still breathing. And Diana? Although the front of the vehicle had been obliterated, the back of the car where Diana was somewhat preserved. There was little damage to the trunk, and a small pastel-coloured tissue box which had been in the back with them had only been slightly damaged. But Diana, like Dodi, was not wearing a seatbelt. The first person at the scene was Henri Paul, a cafe worker. He sees that the roof of the car has taken a huge impact and the back door forced open. When he glances inside, he sees that the woman has been thrown from her seat, is lying now across the floor with her head in between the two front seats. He can also see that her eyelids are still moving, although her eyes remain closed. He shouts to her to see if she is okay, but she doesn't respond, and at this moment, he recognizes her to be Lady Diana. Back in the late 90s, cell phones were not that common, so he ran as fast as he could to the closest phone. Telling the emergency responders that there had been a terrible accident in the tunnel and that Princess Diana needs urgent help should have sparked an immediate response. But the operator did not believe a word from the caller and hung up. As time passes, the tunnel is continuing to fill with smoke and more people. There is traffic trying to get by, and also the paparazzi have caught up. Some begin taking photos of the scene, whilst others scream at them to have some respect. By chance, a young emergency room doctor called Frederick Maillet happens to be travelling home from a night out. He sees the crash. He stops to see if he can help. After a quick analysis of the situation, he realizes that 2 of the victims are dead. His years of training kick in, and he knows exactly what he must do if he wants to save the young woman in front of him, who he hasn't realized for a second is Princess Diana. He happens to have a breathing mask in his car, which he attaches to her to keep oxygen in her lungs. Frederick supports her head and continues to talk to her. To him, her condition seems hopeful. Lady Diana opens her eyes and sees the doctor. Confused and weak, she attempts to stand up, whispering faintly, "My God, what has happened?" 6 minutes after the first call was placed to the emergency operator, the ambulance arrives. Frederick steps back to let his colleagues take over. Doctors begin to attempt CPR on Dodi, but after 15 minutes, he is pronounced dead. Simultaneously, Diana's right foot is stuck under one of the seats. An urgent operation begins using saws to remove her from the car and get her into an ambulance. Every second is precious. As soon as she gets in the ambulance, she is given air and her vitals are measured. Her heart rate is getting slower and her blood pressure is dropping. Symptoms of internal hemorrhaging, among other things. A decision is taken to wait in the ambulance until she stabilizes. They wait for 40 minutes before beginning their journey to the hospital. The hospital, which is only 6 kilometers away from the accident. When they decide to leave, they drive excruciatingly slowly, only 10 kilometers per hour. And it takes another 40 minutes to finally arrive at the hospital. 30 seconds from arriving, Diana has her first heart attack. She is rushed into the operating theatre. This hospital is the best in Paris for this kind of procedure, and she is under the care of 3 brilliant doctors and 4 excellent nurses. They diagnose immediately that she has internal bleeding. Seconds into her operation, her heart stops. For 2 hours, the doctors and nurses try everything they can to save her. But at 4 a.m, she is declared dead in the operating theatre, and there is nothing more they can do.
Une thoracotomie d'urgence a mis en évidence une plaie importante de la veine pulmonaire gauche. Malgré la fermeture de cette plaie et un massage cardiaque externe puis interne de 2 heures, aucune efficacité circulatoire n'a pu être rétablie et le décès a été constaté à 4 heures du matin.
Is there blame to share, and if so, who? Firstly, an investigation was opened into the role of the paparazzi. Multiple of them were accused of involuntary manslaughter, but after 2 years, they were all acquitted of any guilt. An investigation equally is opened about Henri Paul's intoxicated state. Some witnesses recall serving him at the bar, whilst others stated that he was off his face and should never have been allowed near a car, let alone one with royalty in it. In France, there is an unusual law allocating liability to the bar if they allow their customers to drive after they have been drinking too much. So why did he drive them? When the Ritz has notoriously a team of professional drivers specifically there for their clients. Was it because he wanted the prestige of driving such a high security target? Or did the Al-Fayed family, who notably lacked trust in many of their employees, except from their security team, did they force him to drive? There is one first-hand witness who can attest to the allegations, but he is in a coma. The sole survivor of the crash, Trevor Rees, the bodyguard, spent 10 days in a coma. As soon as he awakens, he is interrogated. His recollection was that Henri Paul did not seem the slightest bit drunk. He was professional and not at all acting drunk like some witnesses claim. Trevor believes that allegations against Henri Paul are malicious and malintentioned, but most importantly, untrue. However, Trevor Rees-Jones may not be the most apt to comment on Henri Paul's state due to the fact that he himself had a somewhat dark history concerning driving under the influence. But no traffic cameras or paparazzi filmed the crash, which led to a number of conspiracy theories about Diana's death being an accident. So convincing are these theories that Dodi's own father, Mohammed Al-Fayed, wholeheartedly believes that his son was assassinated by British Secret Service agents. To start, the white Fiat Uno that initiated the crash was never found, even though investigations were opened by France's most experienced detectives and equally Britain's highest internal homeland security units. Surely it cannot be that hard to find a car. To muddy the waters more, the Mercedes had been stolen 4 months prior to the accident. When it was retrieved, 17,000 euros worth of work was done on the car to make it usable again for the Ritz. That sounds like a lot of money for a refurb. The young emergency doctor who arrived on the scene, Frederick, was accused of being MI5, planted there to ensure that Diana would not survive. Although none of these allegations were proven to be true, some people do still believe them. It was also proven that if Diana had been wearing her seatbelt, she would most likely still be with us. And there's one very odd coincidence to add to this tale. On the evening of Diana's death, President Jacques Chirac was nowhere to be found. News of Diana's death was to be announced quickly and formally to the head of state. All of the highest officials across the globe were notified. But there was a problem. Jacques Chirac was unreachable. He was neither at his home address nor at the Palace Élysée. And his wife was completely unaware as to where he could be found. This initiated a small state emergency. Nobody could confirm where he was in the middle of the night on an evening where an extremely high security target has been assassinated or accidentally killed. It is alleged that that evening he had escaped his presidential duties to share a bed with the famous Italian actress Claudia Cardinali. He was promptly found to his wife's bemusement and prepared to give his condolences to the British people and the royal family. Diana's death was felt across the globe. Billions grieved her and the incredible humanitarian work that she did. Sir Elton John beautifully rewrote the lyrics of Candle in the Wind to perform for her at her funeral. Nobody could have estimated just how much her death would affect the nation. If you haven't already, check out this video of this French couple who were hunted down like prey in a French forest. Welcome to all of the new subscribers who joined us this week. We are so grateful to have you as part of our community, and most importantly, please take care of yourselves. Merci, à la prochaine, bisous.